Mama's in the mirror watching Judge Judy. I'm in the kitchen eating leftover sushi, and she goes, "Oh, girl, you gotta hear this one." A man was arrested for running a theme park, and when they said, "Where's your license?" he said, "My dog ate it." Oh, you can't make this shit up. Sometimes I wonder if life's just one big cosmic joke. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. Girl, you gotta hear this one. Mama loves to laugh at how absurd life is, says it's all a comedy and I'm her audience. And I love the way she makes fun of the world. She said, "You'll never guess who with their girlfriend. It was a man who didn't get us out of the bed. He said, I've been through hell and now I need some help. You just can't make this shit up. You just can't make this shit up." Sometimes I wonder if life's just one big cosmic joke. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. Girl, you gotta hear this one.
Hey everybody, it's Squid. Welcome back to the channel. How's everybody on this Friday night? It's the FNL pre-party because Mo and Shizzy do their thing for the pre-party, and I started doing my thing before them. So hope everybody's doing well. We have an interesting one tonight. I've been kind of talking about this all week. Before we get started, if y'all could hit that like button and share this out, because this has been a hot topic in the media for months, actually for years, but more than anything, the last few months, where it's been release the files. This person's a PDF file. This person's a PDF. Well, it's not as simple as even I thought. So we are going to get into the actual case documents as what has been filed by the U.S. And what has been filed by victims and their representatives before we even get to the judge's 14-page order. So this is probably going to be a two-parter. So hold on tight, grab something strong. Happy Friday. For those of you in chat and those of you on Replay Crew, if Replay Crew could drop a comment just saying hi or something, help me out with that algorithm, because now apparently they're not counting views of the lurkers and it's just weird. I don't know what's going on. YouTube is being YouTube and not being clear about exactly how they're doing things and counting things. Yes, and there's this today too. Just saw that Diddy was sentenced to 50 months in jail. There's that too. And speaking of Papa Squid being in the chat today, if anybody on Replay Crew could also, and in the chat, could wish Papa Squid a happy retirement. As of today, he is no longer employed. In the good way. In the good way. He said, "Peace, y'all. I'm out of here. I ain't dealing with this crap no more." So wish him a happy retirement, because now he can do whatever the hell he wants to do, whenever the hell he wants to do, without asking anybody for permission. It was great. Yes, happy retirement. Yeah, in 50 months, that's it. That's a whole nother piece of work right there, but I didn't cover any of that case because I had opinions that were not YouTube appropriate. And we always know that there are differences between what we think and what we say. You might have some thoughts that it's okay to have some thoughts that are not always the nicest. It's how you handle them and what you choose to say in public that defines who you are as a person. And I choose not to cover Diddy because of the fact that I have strong opinions. So what am I doing? I'm covering Epstein. Fucking here we go. um, it's I need a Patreon account. I don't have enough people for a Patreon account. I am not a big channel. I just want to get one, like maybe get to 5,000 or get to the place where I don't have to shall we say, when baby squid goes to school, the goal is to not have to get a full-time job. That is because the plan was always to go back to work when she went to school. The plan is not to have to get a 9 to 5 job. So I would like my channel to be able to support me enough for that. And I'm sorry to my mods who ended up in somebody else's YouTube video yesterday. Y'all, I don't ever want you um, I don't ever y'all were nice to somebody in chat that was in chat yesterday that appears to be a certain someone that a lot of people don't like. And my mods were, and the rest of my chat were being civil to this person so that we can, because if this we're not civil to this person, whether it's them or not, I'm not convinced that it's them. But you know, um, that's being said. But you ended up in somebody else's YouTube video and it was not I have no problem with people using shit because it's not a copyright thing. I really don't give a crap. However, it's the implication that I was an anti ecosystem channel because of the topic that was being covered when the screenshot was shown. So I apologize to my mods who were in that screenshot and my chat members because your names were not blocked out. So I apologize to you. Um, there's not a whole lot I could do about it, but and to the people who told me, "Well, you put shit on public on a YouTube channel, so deal with it." It's not a fucking copyright problem. I have no issue with this person. I have issues with my chat's privacy. So, I have issue with my chat's privacy and the fact that some of people on both sides of this fucking issue that we talked about yesterday are fucking nutcases and a little bit wrong in the and I don't want anybody to be attacked because of who they associate with in somebody else's chat. Because that person is generally not welcome in most people's chats because of who he is or is pretending to be. And I am not that person. You fucked around and you found out. You can consider me anti what the hell's now because I just don't give two flying fucks anymore. So you can consider me part of that anti what the hell's ecosystem now because I just don't give two flying fucks. So, I have no problem with the screenshot itself. However, it's the fact that you put people's names out there who literally want nothing to do with this situation except for being mods on my channel. So, and Heidi, I apologize to you specifically because you were saying hi to this person as it was screenshotted and posted in a video that has thousands and thousands of views. So, Lee's not entirely the most appropriate thing in my mind, but you know what? That's that person's problem, and it is what it is. And so now I'll probably only be covering literally documents only, and maybe only once a week because I'm just fucking done because those people are fucking psychotic. And the fact that I got attacked in my comment section, a couple of them I deleted. I did screenshot them, but a couple of them I deleted because they were like, well, maybe we should copyright strike your channel for using that picture in a thumbnail. Like, okay, Lynette. But anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest and apologize to my chat for something that was out of my control. Because you do not deserve to be treated like that by another creator. Hold on. Hold tight for just a second. Whee! I'm sorry, it's blurry, but it's a picture of my my chat. I just didn't like the implication that this person was in my chat because I was anti what the hales. So, by the way, so now for those of you who are like, you can't talk about this because you don't like Jeremy. Well, now I really don't. So, you know, it is what it is. And once again, it has nothing to do with copyright. It has to do with privacy of people in my chat and also the implication that I was an anti what the Hales channel because that specific person was in my chat. However, that's not the fucking case. All right, first things first, we are going to start with the US's motion. And I have all these documents up and I just have to close because I have Discord open and I have every freaking app known to man open right now, as opposed to any other day. You know what I mean? So we haven't even got to the judge's order, and we probably won't get to the judge's order tonight. However, this is document 61. This is first. Stacy, did that answer your question? And I really don't want to be a bitch, but I was kind of joking when I put it in a chat that I was being petty, or am I being petty by being upset about this? Yeah, he's been in mine or that person. I'm not entirely sure that that's him because he seems too respectful to he seems too respectful for it to actually be him. I don't know. It's probably somebody making, you know, it was just one of those situations of uh now you opened my mods to being personally attacked because of who they said hi to, because that shit's happened before, because some people on that side of the aisle are, you can't talk to them because I don't like them and you can't have them in your chat. I'm a fucking 40-year-old fucking woman. I can do whatever the fuck I goddamn well please. Thank you very much. I'm sort of pissed now. Yeah, I also got Mother Nature today, so that might be part of the reason that I'm a little more sensitive about it than normal. But it's not me. It's not the screenshot. I could care less. But he also didn't say where it came from. So he also didn't say where it came from, which is what kind of irked me a little bit. Like, and he was talking about John being in anti what the Hales ecosystems chats the night before, and then he brought that up, and it was like, are you implying that he was in an anti what the hills? Because that leaves my mods open when they go in other chats to being attacked. And fuck that shit. No, fuck that shit. So, oh, and people have been asking me, specifically Jeffrey, you asked me what the little was going to be a Halloween. She's going to be a ghost, spider, not mole, spider. So, yes. Yes. As do some other mods. So, but in other chats too. So it's kind of one of them situations. But I'm very protective of my chats, especially the people who have been with me since I had like 50 subscribers. Because y'all are my ride or dies. I wouldn't have this channel without you guys. So I get a little protective of my chats because I am a YouTuber and I'm okay with my shit being put out there because people play my streams in their damn Discords because they need lives. Why? I'm not really sure. Like, you're not making any money off of Discord. It's free. Whatever. So, you know, but I'm very protective of my peeps. Heidi, you know I love you as much as you can on the internet, you know. Alrighty, but we are not going to talk about the headlines of what's in the headlines. Yeah, he's in here, and and if he's rude to my guest, I get annoyed and I boot just like I do everybody else. But he was being respectful yesterday, and I just didn't appreciate the implication that my channel was an anti what the Hales channel just because he was in there and talking a lot. Um, he was talking a lot yesterday. And the fact that the one of the reasons that I believe that it's not him is because he was talking a lot yesterday and he was kind of being respectful of my chat and he was interacting with multiple people in the chat besides me. So that's one of the reasons that I'm like, but as long as someone in this chat is respectful, they're, so yeah, and that's the thing. If he's a major jerk here, like I've booted only me a couple of times. Like I've booted a bunch of people. I've booted people that I like because they were being disrespectful to my guest. Um, so it was if someone's going to talk and be respectful, I just let them talk because that's the only way that you're going to one see somebody's opinion, and also they sometimes when people talk, they talk too much. So I just let people talk. As long as they're respectful, they're welcome here. I just didn't, it was not the screenshot that was shown. I don't care about a fucking screenshot. I care about the implication that I was an anti what the Hales channel because people in my chat were talking to him. That's the problem I had. And I don't appreciate the implication because I lost about 10 subscribers after that, and I can directly link that to Jeremy's video. Wouldn't that be tortious interference? Just saying. Just a question. Like that's the whole like you implicate that someone is a certain way and then they lose subscribers, which means they lose money. I know I have a small channel, but wouldn't that kind of be the same thing? Just a question because I honestly don't know. It's a debatable question. Um, it's a debatable question, but when I can directly link a loss of subscribers to a screenshot being shown in somebody else's video, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I just don't like hypocrisy. And yeah, it's a larger percentage of users lost. I gained a couple back. Um, I gained a couple back. I don't know if it was YouTube, whatever. Sometimes shit happens. Like I've been unsubscribed to channels I'm members of. I don't know how that happens, but it's like it just so happened to be yesterday that happened, and so did the downturn in subs. So it's just fucking interesting coincidence, shall you say? All right, but let's get to this because this person's an actual evil shit. Like, not just plays one on the internet. Um, this is the actual documents. I have access to the entire docket. Everything that was sealed is sealed, but everything going all the way back to the beginning of the case, including transcripts of hearings, are unsealed. So there's a potential, if we're interested in it, that we can go through as much as we're willing to take the time. But the thing that's been in the media lately and that's been really driving me nuts is you have people on the left going, well, Trump said he'd do this. Trump said he'd do this. And then you have people on the right that are like, well, a liberal judge blocked the release. But you have people showing the first page of the motion and saying, this is the judge that blocked the release of the grand jury. Well, I started looking into it, and there's more. There is way more. I wanted to look at how the documents were written, for one. There is multiple victims who have written not impact statements is the wrong word for it, but just letters to the judge about what they think of this. And then the judge's order denying the release of the grand jury transcripts and evidence is 14 pages long. It's not this one page, like Judge Belatho writes generally like a one page order. It is 14 pages. This judge liked to hear himself talk or write, but there's a lot in there, and it's like, is this really partisan politics? Is half the mainstream media on one side wants to put it, and the half the mainstream media on the other side wants to put it, and all these influencers, no offense to them, they do lots of reels on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and not really long form videos where you can get into all of this stuff. However, 14 pages is not something that you can go see, and not exactly. Not exactly. And remember, when it comes to grand jury stuff is supposed to be sealed because you're supposed to be supposed to, in theory, make decisions without fear of retribution, implication. You're supposed to be able to just go in there and just, but nothing that happens in the jury room is supposed to come out. I believe it was yesterday, a grand juror from the Karen Reed case was sentenced yesterday because she was caught releasing information from the Karen Reed grand jury. It wasn't supposed to be the Karen Reed, but if you watched EDB's video, the only case of note during that time is the Karen Reed. So grand juries are not supposed to be made public for reasons. So it's not only yeah, and JC, if you're talking about me, I was I just didn't appreciate the implication from somebody that I was, because you were in here and you were talking. You weren't disrespectful to anybody in here, which is why you were in here for so long and everybody was talking to you. Um, so, uh, so, but we will get into this. This is filed on 7/18. U.S. motion to unseal grand jury transcripts. At the Attorney General, the Department of Justice hereby moves the court to release the grand jury transcripts associated with the above referenced indictment, which is the U.S. versus Jeffrey Epstein. And I know y'all share this shit because I know the YouTube algorithm is going to throttle me for talking about a case that they don't want talked about. Charlie Kirk and Jeffrey Epstein are like algorithm killers. They don't like that. I notice I get like a shit ton less views, obviously, than most, but like it just seems like the algorithm just says F you when I talk about things like this. So this is extra important that you share it out. Also, this is something that I have not seen, and I could be wrong because I don't scour the entire internet for people who are covering the same things as me, actually go through every document. So we could be and hey, Sarcastic, how are you? Hey, Thunder, good to see you. On July 6th, the Department of Justice and FBI issued a memorandum describing an exhaustive review undertaken of investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein. Quote the memorandum, that bullshit document. I'm sorry, I'm going to call it like I see it. Yes, in general, I am a Trump supporter, but I also call a spade a spade. This whole fucking situation has been handled extremely poorly. Extremely poorly. Extremely poorly. Footnote 1, the memorandum details the steps taken by the DOJ and FBI to determine whether evidence existed that could predicate an investigation into uncharged third parties. As the memorandum concluded, no such evidence was uncovered during the review. Since July 6th, there's been extensive public interest in the basis for the memorandum's conclusions, while the DOJ and FBI continue to adhere to the conclusions reached in the memorandum. Transparency to the American public is of the utmost importance to this administration, given the public interest in investigative work conducted by the Department of Justice and FBI into Epstein. The DOJ moves the court to unseal the underlying grand jury transcripts in U.S. v. Epstein, subject to appropriate redactions of victim-related and other personal identifying information. I can appreciate that. However, this was written This sounds more like a press release and a cover my ass release than a or than a court document. We've um yeah, say exactly. Like the one thing I have noticed about certain people on one side versus certain people on the other is the group think. Like we can not like certain actions that someone does and still support them as a whole. But yeah, this was the worst fucking thing this could. mm, th- this is the worst effing thing that they could have done. Um, just the worst. Oh, and I also have transcripts of depositions as well. By the way, in this shit show of a situation, not necessarily from the Epstein case, but from the Maxwell case. So, and it's a person who is unfortunately no longer with us for reasons that I'm not really sure of. I don't believe anything that's reported or that I see um, in certain instances because I know the government lies. Because I was once a government employee and I know the government lies about a fucking lot of shit. Some of it for the general public's own protection, some for national security, and some because they're just generally shitty humans. Imagine that I got a call from Congressman online wanting me to participate in citizen conference. Not a fan, so nope. Oh my goodness. All right, and that footnote was just the press release. And God knows I'm not going to read that because we ain't got time for that shit. Oh, and the 5-day fast that I was going to do, Mother Nature said no. So we'll probably do it in either next weekend or the weekend after. So I will probably be doing a 5-day fast. So if I get bitchy, I will be documenting it and making a video of it just to see. The department will work with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York to make appropriate redactions of victim-related information and other personal identifying information prior to releasing the transcripts. Transparency in this process will not be at the expense of our obligation under the law to protect victims. On July 2nd, 2019, a grand jury sitting in the Southern District of New York returned an indictment charging Epstein with trafficking offenses. Docket number 2. While awaiting trial, Epstein may or may not have self-deleted in his Metropolitan Correctional Center, in his cell in Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, soon after the court dismissed the indictment 52. June 29th, 2020, a grand jury sitting in the Southern District of New York charged Epstein's longtime confidant, Ghislaine Maxwell, with numerous offenses relating to this word that YouTube will definitely throttle my channel if I say, in coercion of minors. See U.S. v. Maxwell, 2020. In December of 2021, a jury found Maxwell guilty on several counts. Maxwell was sentenced to 240 months imprisonment, and the Second Circuit later affirmed her convictions and sentence. On July 6, 2025, the DOJ and FBI announced the conclusion of their review of the particulars of Epstein's crimes and death. Since then, the public interest in the Epstein matter has remained. Given this long-standing and legitimate interest, the government now moves to unseal grand jury transcripts associated with Epstein. Here's my thought process, though. This happened in 2019. Why wasn't anything released between 2020 and 2024? Just a question. Yeah, so much for prison time for a crime with no victims. This is just. Footnote 2 is the DOJ is filing similar motions in U.S. v. Maxwell and in the Southern District of Florida. I believe people are being protected. You and I have had a conversation about this based on some interesting undercover footage that has been released recently. If you don't subscribe to James O'Keefe, um, you should, because he put out an interesting video. And I will take the Brandon Tatum sort of mentality on this. I have no evidence of what happened either way, so everything is open to me. When someone can show me some evidence one way or the other, right now I'm like anything's possible. Could someone have self-deleted in their cell? Sure. Could it have been what Ghislaine Maxwell called a hit? Of course. I have no evidence either way. It just seems shady, to say the least. But I'm open to whatever might happen. I don't know. It's tradition of law that proceedings before a grand jury shall generally remain secret. Um, that case, the tradition of secrecy, however, is not absolute. Although Rule 6b(3) of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure generally lists the exceptions to grand jury secrecy, the Second Circuit has recognized that there are certain special circumstances in which release of grand jury records is appropriate, even outside the boundaries of the rule. Rule 6e(3) does not displace that inherent power. It merely identifies a permissive list of situations where that power can be used. One such, quote, special circumstance is historical interest in by the public. My only problem with this, and like I said, I go I could think see ya. Remember, it's a hell of a lot easier to be kind. Being kind is free. Being an asshole takes work. Trust me, I know. Have a good one. Um, I am well, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, or quacks like a duck, uh, I am all for basically telling the government that you're stupid. Doesn't matter who is in charge, so to speak. I call it like I see it. Um, and I think that this was handled very, very poorly by a lot of people. Um, Pam Bondi being one of them. I also think that these people, Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, because in general I like Bongino, um, Pam Bondi, I think they got in a little over their heads. They were all like, "Oh, we're gonna release the files. We're gonna release the files," and then they actually saw shit and were like, "This won't be good for maybe a lot of people that like." My personal opinion, I think like 3/4 of the government is and government employees are shady in some resort. So, you know, I have a theory that like this would, if everything was released, it would take the government down, which might not be. You didn't hear that from me. I'm all for transparency, but I think they got in a little over their heads because they were so gung ho before the election. Then the election happened, and everything kind of goes, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about." Like, hell, you don't, bitches. And public interest, historical public interest. But this case is still, this is not historical yet. It's going to be, but at the same time, like the victims are still young women. Most of them are still alive, thank God. But like this has such an implication on their life that I don't even think historical interest. I think historical, you have to wait a time period that's longer than 5 years. Eh, Corruption in government, say it ain't so. I know, right? Holy crap, Killdozer. Like, the, who would have thought those two would ever go together? Like, uh, yeah, that got some serious pressure from both foreign and international players in this. Yeah, and I'm also convinced it's another reason why certain people said they hated Trump. Um, because you don't go from liking someone in 2014 and them being one of your favorite people and them being the epitome of the American dream to a Yahtzee and arpist and this and that if you haven't if you don't got something to hide. Just a thought. I also think Trump doesn't give a flying F about letting people face consequences, so he's likely not protecting anyone. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree with you on this one. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm always open to the possibility of being wrong because guess what? That's how you learn. And if you're always right, then you live in an echo chamber or you're brainwashed or you're delusional, which I would like to think that I'm not any of those. I have my moments. In my opinion, Bondi and them discovered how many of the investors and ended up hunting accidents and such. Y- Yeah, I, oh, yeah, yeah. Megyn Kelly, Tatum, winning Robert Gouveia are good with covering various political things. Winning reality has many past live streams, ideological subversion, and unveiling reality. Yeah, Robert Gouveia is one of my favorite people to watch. I like how he breaks things down. Um, Tatum too. Megyn Kelly, I kind of go back and forth on her, so I'm always right except when I'm wrong. Uh, and Craig, this court retains discretion to determine whether such an interest outweighs the countervailing interest in privacy and secrecy. Public officials, lawmakers, pundits, and ordinary citizens remain deeply interested and concerned about the Epstein matter. Indeed, other jurists have released grand jury transcripts after concluding that Epstein case qualifies as a matter of public concern. See order granting plaintiff's motion for reconsideration of trial court's February 29th, 2024 order. After all, Jeffrey Epstein is the most infamous PDF file in American history. The facts surrounding Epstein's case tell a tale of national disgrace. Yeah, unfortunately, he's not the only one. There's also think he was a CIA. There's people that believe, and like you said, I have no evidence either way. James O'Keefe's video was pretty compelling. That people think he's a CIA operative, and that's why he was being protected, and that's also why he was tragically. I don't know. There is so much because we don't have the information. The brain naturally wants to make things make sense. Going back to physiologic or physiology from ancient man, like your brain wants a complete story. So when it doesn't get it, your brain will try to make things make sense. That's why people see faces in napkins and food. Your brain tries to make sense of things that don't make any sense. And sometimes, in my opinion, just based on my college education, and I know a college education isn't everything, but based on what I've experienced in both college education and clinical practice, um, the brain needs to come up with something that makes sense. And sometimes what makes sense to the brain when you say it out loud makes makes you sound complete and total batshit crazy. Heidi, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever worked in a hospital and you worked with cognitively impaired patients, you have seen exactly what I'm talking about. You can see the brain trying to figure out how to make a story out of shit that doesn't make any sense. It's and Dan Davis, thank you for the $5 super chat. I would always be right if it wasn't for my left side. Thank you for ensuring that I don't work for free tonight. I appreciate you very, very much. Uh, and with this one of the reasons that I can tell this isn't this stream is being throttled by YouTube is because we only have 18 people in here. And with the amount of people who have said that they were interested in this case and the amount of people who actually showed up for this stream, there is one, YouTube doesn't like live streams, and two, they really don't like this topic. Yeah, they really don't like this topic. Yes, it will fill in the gaps, and it sometimes it fills in the gaps with shit that makes absolutely no sense when you say it out loud, but your brain tends to make it's the way the brain is wired. It's not something that we can control, it's just what happens. It's like when you see shadows, it's why you think there's when you see shadows out of the corner of your eye, you think something's moving. Not always. Not always. So it's one of those situations. I think it was international and he blackmailed people. How else did he get the money and influence? So speaking of the international people, um, I found what is believed to be his black book. I am not showing it because it is literally an address book, and I am not going to get if I redact every single address book on there or address on there, the whole thing will be black, and it's not worth showing. But I do have it. I did I did find it, and it's got some interesting damn names in there. I'm gonna say. I can't guarantee because it was leaked that this is actually the document and the black book, but it's pretty damn compelling. I, ugh. I didn't know what was being discussed. I just showed up to say hi to you all. Haven't caught your live in a bit. Yeah, you've been here in a bit. How have you been? Um, but I've been talking about this stream all week because I've actually been wanting to talk about this, and it's been like there's been no time, and then other shit just happened, and we finally got time. It's just this does qualify as a case of qualifies as a matter of public concern. However, I think you have to go about it tactfully, and I just think the government screwed the pooch on all aspects of this situation. He's the most infamous PDF file. The facts surrounding the Epstein case tell a tale of national disgrace. Discussing the plea agreement secured by Epstein in Florida, the grand jury records are thus critical pieces of an important moment in our nation's history. The time for the public to guess what they contain should end. Notably, the privacy interests at stake on the other side of the balance are substantially diminished due to Epstein's tragic self-deletion. Of course, as noted above, the Department of Justice will work with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York to redact all victim identifying information prior to any release. Yeah, the black book does not prove wrongdoing, but a connection. And sometimes you can know somebody, and I don't run in powerful circles at all. I'm as middle class as it gets. However, I have learned that sometimes you want to let's see how to put this. Sometimes you want to not let people know how you feel about them. You might absolutely despise someone, but you will still talk to them or be civil with them as to not make enemies with them because they are a very powerful person. So certain people may be associated with him in the sense of, I don't like you. We have an understanding. I don't like you, but because you're a very powerful person, if I make enemies with you, that might screw up my business or my, who I'm able to work with and stuff like that. So it's kind of like keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer kind of situation. So you can't always take, especially in rich people circles. Like I said, I'm not there, but I've seen enough bullshit and heard enough bullshit to figure it out that the friends close, enemies closer. You might not like somebody, but you keep them around because keeping them around is less dramatic and less difficult for your life than kicking them out. And you smile, you nod, you take pictures. You can be standing next to somebody and taking a picture with them and not even actually know who they are. So, yeah. Yeah, the first plea deal is a smoking gun as to how high in government and international governance this behavior went. Yeah, sort of along the lines of correlation does not equal causation. Yes, exactly. Mm. Oh. For this reason, the court should conclude that the Epstein and Maxwell cases qualify as a matter of public interest, release the associated grand jury transcripts, and lift any pre existing protective orders. It is entirely conceivable that in some situations, historical or public interest alone could justify the release of grand jury information. And that was submitted by Pam Bondi. So that's the first document we have. Mm. Well, the ones that are household names, I'm sure are still breathing, but some of the other ones, I don't know who they are. But there's some names in there that I was like, oh, I recognize that person. Oh, I recognize that person. I don't like that person, but I recognize them. Um, let's just put it this way. Anybody remember Ricky Gervais at the Oscars? It's a lot of those people. Just saying. Just saying. All right. And then the judge put in a couple orders asking for a memorandum of law. So we have a few of those. However, let's see. 66 is the first one. Well, a lot of people in a certain city in California. So my inference would be yes, just based on their level of TDS. Um, yeah, just saying. Like I would like to think that Trump is a better person than that. However, even thinking that he's the most horrible person in the world, and say I had TDS to the max, if he was in those files, Biden and Biden's DOJ would have released that shit and everything they have, um, with Trump's name in it. And guess what? They didn't. Yeah, I don't either. Rich people giving themselves awards is kind of stupid to me. Um, Especially when half of those movies you've never even seen anyway. Like half of those movies that are nominated, I've never even heard of. So it's like, yeah, yeah. Trump is a Democrat, not a Republican. And yeah, look where we are. Yep, it's because one side shifted so far that they kind of, when they took everybody else with them, we're now in the middle. What used to be seen as, it's just weird. Righties tend to be more anal about keeping their abnormal proclivities secret. Yeah. Those church people don't like their dirty little secrets to get out. Sarcastic. Did you ever see a show? It was on ABC, but it was only one season. It was called Good Christian Bitches. That was the epitome of like the churchgoer, but it's like behind the scenes, it's like all the drama in the world, the church ladies. That's kind of what Republicans are like, in my opinion. It's like we don't put our dirty laundry, like we don't act. I don't. It's not that we're any less crazy. It's just it's one is kept behind closed doors and one is aired out in public. You didn't see that? It was only one season. It wasn't renewed. I wanted it to be renewed because it was freaking hilarious to me. Um, yeah, and it is people with enough money, not right or left. It is. It's it. Yeah, and it Heidi, it was just playing. That show was just playing on some stereotypes. I thought it was funny as hell, but it kind of reminded me of when I was a kid, and the people who were the most Christian were like the least Christian people in the world. Um, Poor people need awards. I nominate Squid for Is that my channel's Giphies? Like Roslyn has her Giphies? My Giphy, I don't have the box. All I have is the little middle finger. Because somebody broke my Giphy. Somebody broke my Giphy. But a hobo award, yeah, we regular people. But yeah, kind of like how food stamps used to be shameful and now it's a flex. Yeah. I remember when I was little, it was like, I don't think my mom ever used them. I don't think. However, if she would have, she wouldn't have told anybody. Um, you keep your problems behind closed doors. You don't go on Instagram and say, I'm only getting $1,000 instead of $3,000. I would like some free money. All right. This is the government's memorandum in response to the court's orders of July 22nd. Preliminary statement. Government respectfully submits memorandum in response to the court's orders concerning the 2 pending motions to unseal grand jury transcripts. Look at the differences in docket numbers. Look at the differences. Epstein document 61, Maxwell document number 785. If I get any, if I run the docket for Ghislaine Maxwell's case, that in itself is going to be like expensive as hell. In cases prosecuted in this district, the memorandum, as directed by the court, addresses the specific facts and factors highlighted in the court orders relevant to the particular grand jury materials at issue in order to ensure that transparency in this process, not at the expense of the government's obligation under the law to protect victims. The government also respectfully requests leave to file a supplemental submission once the government and court have received any filings from the victims or referenced in the transcripts. The court's orders, as the court recognized, the Second Circuit has held that there are certain special circumstances in which the release of grand jury records is appropriate outside the boundaries of the rule. Recognizing there are certain special circumstances, the Second Circuit enumerated a list of exhaustive factors for trial courts to consider when deciding such motions. The identity of the party seeking disclosure, whether the defendant to the grand jury proceeding or the government opposes the disclosure, why the disclosure is being sought in the particular case, what specific information is being sought for disclosure, how long ago the grand jury proceedings took place. And I think this is this is what I have a problem with. It's only been like 6 years. The current status of the principals of the grand jury proceedings and of their families, the extent to which the desired material, either permissibly or impermissibly, has been previously made public, whether witnesses to the grand jury proceedings who might be affected by disclosure are still alive, and the additional need for maintaining secrecy in the particular case in question. Oh, the right versus left is such a tiny part of things. The other divides are just as potent. Money, power, victimhood, identity politics. What it all boils down to is people with power don't want to lose it. There's the $1 million right there. That's the, like, people that are in power don't want to stay or want to stay in power. And they get really, really angry when people take away the things that keep them in power. All right, in that footnote, there's currently a circuit split, see Pitch v. US, describing the circuit split, and petition for an order directing release of records. In light of this split, when the government sought similar relief seeking to unseal grand jury transcripts in the Southern District of Florida from 2005 and 2007 relating to Epstein, the Honorable Robin L. Rosenberg, who is bound by the 11th Circuit's rule barring extra rule disclosures set forth in Pitch, denied that motion. In Grand Jury, Southern District of Florida, July 23rd, 2025. On July 22nd, 2025, the court directed the government to file a memorandum of law addressing with specificity these and any other factors the government views as germane to its application. The court also directed the government to state whether, before filing the instant motion, counsel for the government reviewed the Maxwell grand jury transcripts and whether the government provided notice to the victims of the motion to unseal, and to submit the indices of Epstein and Maxwell grand jury materials, including a brief summary, the number of pages and dates, a complete set of the Epstein and Maxwell grand jury transcripts, a complete proposed redacted set of the transcripts, a description of any other Epstein and Maxwell grand jury materials, including but not limited to exhibits. In the Craig factors, the court directed the government to address with specificity the factors and any other factors that government views as germane to its application. What follows is a discussion of each in the Craig factors, which are designed to assist the court in exercising, quote, careful judgment and balancing the interests in public disclosure in unique circumstances of strongly expressed and wide-ranging public interest and the traditional considerations concerning the secrecy of grand jury proceedings. I mean, and this is where it gets sensitive. It's your... Hey, it's me. I don't think it's Epstein in the sense of, like, I think one side of the aisle that is the TDS people are so convinced that Trump is a bad person that they want them to be released to show that how awful of a person he is. Then there's the other people who want to disprove that he's in the files. And then you have this group of people who is like, I want to see who in government or who in Hollywood or who in power is a fucking jackass, because Epstein might be dead. But a lot of the people who might have been involved in the situation and been the receiver of the gifts he gave them, so to speak, the god-awful, evil gifts, are still alive. And I kind of want to know who those people are, because if they were shady once, they're shady now. The only one who is confirmed is Virginia Giuffre. So it's me. I don't think it's Epstein, so to speak. I think it's who he knew, who he associated with, and who he gave things to. God, that's gross. I even feel bad wording it like that, but I'm trying to word it as YouTube friendly as possible. The identity of the party seeking disclosure. The first factor considers which party is seeking disclosure of grand jury materials. The identity of the party seeking the disclosure carries great weight. Here, the government is seeking disclosure of grand jury transcripts, a request that is consistent with increasing calls for additional disclosures in this matter. The government's position serves as a preliminary indication that a need for secrecy is not especially strong, even if it's not dispositive. Government support cannot confer disclosure, nor can government opposition preclude it. While the government acknowledges the extraordinary nature of this instant request, it also, like the court, faced with a broad public interest in underlying proceedings. And then the footnote. The press release, Chairman Comer subpoenas Ghislaine Maxwell for deposition at federal prison, House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. The facts and circumstances surrounding both Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Epstein's cases have received immense public interest and scrutiny. At the outset of the 119th Congress on February 11th, the Committee and the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. I kind of like this. Sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Justice requesting a briefing regarding the documents in the department's possession regarding the investigation and the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. On May 8th, the task force sent another letter to the department requesting the public release of the entirety of the Epstein files and briefing regarding the release of these files. Hey, Southern Red Sox girl. Thanks for lurking and thanks for checking in. Yeah, but if they're released by court order, I don't know. It's so freaking complicated. Whether the defendant to the grand jury proceeding or the government opposes the disclosure. The second factor asks whether the defendant or the government opposes public disclosure of grand jury materials. Affirming denial of motion to disclose grand jury materials where government opposed release. A defendant's opposition to public disclosure is not dispositive. Affirming district court's decision to disclose grand jury transcripts and exhibits over defendant corporation's objections. Also, knowledge is power. Releasing this much power isn't in their best interest. It's just so, like, this goes high. Like, why disclosure is being sought in this particular case. The third factor considers why disclosure is being sought in the particular case. The Second Circuit and Craig held it is entirely conceivable that in some situations, historical or public interest alone could justify the release of grand jury information. Yes, maybe like 30 years from now. But when wounds are still fresh, it's another one of those. But I think this motion and this memorandum of support is grandstanding by the executive branch. I think they knew that this wasn't going to get, these documents were not going to be unsealed. They did it to show that they tried. Like I said, in general, a Trump supporter, but also not afraid to call bullshit where I see it. And I think Bondi was playing the bullshit flag on this one. She planted that shit deep in the ground. Like, yeah, we don't have all the entirety of the JFK information released. Yeah. And that's a Rosalind thing. Like, I don't have any insight into that whatsoever, but that's why I watch her videos, because she does. As described above, and in the underlying motions, there is undoubtedly a clearly expressed interest from the public in Jeffrey Epstein's and Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes. Beyond that, there is an abundant public interest in the investigative work conducted by the DOJ and the FBI into those crimes. Many historians have spent countless hours documenting the Rosenberg story. Many questions remain unanswered, and the public's interest remains. Attention given to Epstein and Maxwell cases has recently intensified in the wake of the July 6, 2025 memorandum announcing the conclusions of the government's review into the investigation. As noted below, the government has not received any outreach from Epstein's surviving family members concerning the instant motion. That's about to change. Do I release information that could damage world powers, or do I wield the power myself for the good of my country, family, and friends? Another $1 million question. And that's the thing. We sit here behind our keyboards and in front of our little cameras on the internet, giving our opinions. But at the end of the day, they are uninformed opinions, because I don't know what's in those documents. I have not seen any of them for myself. Like, I have not talked to any victims. I have not talked to anybody prosecuting these kids. Like, this is all, it's all speculation on what could be in those files. And that's my view. That's part of the problem. Yes, I identify as the problem. Sorry, Spawn. Um, we sit here. This is one of the reasons that in general I stick to documents and just reading into the documents because one, the documents are what's presented as fact, not what is an opinion in an article somewhere, um, or someone trying to sway me to their side on Twitter, God forbid. But also, like this goes beyond the headlines, and this gets into, are they writing this? It all goes back to the writing style. Are they writing this knowing that this shit is not going to be approved? They're just writing it like, here, let me put 5 minutes into a motion and try to make it work and try to make it look good so that in the public eye, I look like I'm trying. But behind the scenes, I really don't care. It's this $1,000,000 question that I have. This right here. You and I are on the same page. While it ticks me off that people will get away with heinous crimes, I don't know everything that's at stake. Yeah, and I think that's where the theory of the CIA stuff comes into play. I have no idea exactly what I think of that. My opinion keeps changing, but like if that's true, that has international um complications, shall you say. Uh, the instant motions for unsealing are consistent with fundamental purposes set forth in that memorandum, given the magnitude of abhorrence of Epstein's crimes. She uses these descriptive words like she's clutching her pearls. It's like, woman, get to the point. To provide information to the public while remaining sensitive to protect the rights of victims. What specific information is being sought for disclosure? The fourth factor asks what specific information the movement seeks to disclose. Here, the government seeks the public disclosure of the grand jury transcripts in Epstein and Maxwell cases. As stated in the pending motions, any public disclosure granted by the court would be subject to appropriate redactions of victim-related and other personal identifying information. And how long ago they took place. The fifth factor asks how long ago the grand jury proceedings took place. The grand jury met in early June and July of 2019 in Epstein, and June and July of 2020 and March of 2021 in Maxwell. Here, the passage of time has not dulled the public's interest in these cases. If historical interest in a specific case has persisted over a number of years, that serves as an important indication that the public's interest in release of the information is still substantial. Yes, number of years. I don't think that the number of years for whatever Pam Bondi and the actual, like the Oval Office have is different, in my opinion, than the grand jury. The grand jury stuff, 6 years is too, for me, for my personal opinion, it's too soon. And this is coming from someone who wants to see these documents. This is where it's torn. What I want and what I know is appropriate are two different things. I want to see all those documents. However, I know that those documents aren't appropriate to be shown at this particular time. With those thoughts, I bid you a good evening and go to sleep in front of cameras while I wired up like a hamster getting electrocuted. Oh no. Good luck. Have a good night. The sixth factor considers the current status of the principals of the grand jury proceedings and that of their families. The passage of time brings about the death of the principal parties involved in the investigations, as well as that of their immediate families. The court should consider the continued existence and vulnerabilities of such parties. In this case, the grand jury testimony was offered specifically in connection with charges proposed against Epstein and Maxwell. Epstein is deceased with no family has approached the government indicating an interest in the instant motions. One of Epstein's family members previously filed a request for materials pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, and the government responded to that request and no litigation ensued. Maxwell is currently incarcerated, and no family member has approached the government indicating an interest in the motions. 7. The, the extent to which the desired material, either permissibly or impermissibly, has been made public. The government is not aware of the relevant grand jury transcripts being impermissibly leaked to the public. Certain aspects and subject matters of the transcripts became public during Maxwell's trial. To the extent that any of the desired material was disclosed to Maxwell as a result of the government's disclosure obligations, it was disclosed pursuant to a protective order. Many of the victims whose accounts relating to Epstein and Maxwell that were the subject of grand jury testimony testified at trial, consistent with the accounts described by an FBI agent and the detective from the NYPD in the grand jury, and have also made some public factual accounts in the course of civil litigation. The government is providing under seal a list of witnesses whose accounts were conveyed in the grand jury proceedings and a corresponding list noting which witnesses testified at trial. The one thing I don't want is for the actual PDF files be able to roam free in our nation, much less worldwide. When the ability to prevent further is right there in those documents, I don't want guilty people being able to roam free because some people's lives might be disrupted. Yeah, I see your point. I can see both sides, and that's what makes it so damn hard. Is I can see both sides, and both sides are not necessarily wrong, but two things can be true at the same time. So it's hard. And this is why we talk about hard shit. Because there is no wrong answer, there is no right answer, there's no easy answer. And I think we live in a world where we want instant gratification and easy answers. And that ain't always the case. Whether witnesses to the grand jury proceedings who might be affected by disclosure are still alive. Here, there was one witness, an FBI agent, during the Epstein grand jury proceedings. There were two witnesses, the same FBI agent from the Epstein grand jury proceedings, and a detective with the NYPD, who was a task force officer, child exploitation and human movement task force. During the Maxwell grand jury proceedings, both witnesses are still alive. The FBI agent continues to be an agent with the FBI, and detective continues to be a detective with the NYPD as well as the task force. Consistent with application rules concerning the admissibility of hearsay testimony, the grand jury witnesses described statements of others, including statements of and concerning victims, many of whom are still alive. In the sealed submission accompanying this file, the government will note which victims are still alive. The ninth factor, the additional need for maintaining secrecy in a particular case in question. In addition to the typical reasons for the grand jury secrecy and the grand jury transcripts, contain victim-related and other personal identifying information related to third parties who have neither been charged or alleged to be involved with crimes with which Epstein and Maxwell were charged, to which the government is sensitive, and which is why the government proposes redacting the transcripts before releasing them. That's another thing. With if half the rumors of who's on the list is true, they should all be prosecuted. Yeah, but there are people who might have known things and said things that weren't actually involved, whose lives might be upended because they were mentioned. There's no easy, and this is why shit like this that runs this high just sucks, because there's just some things that are not. I see both sides, and it sucks. Sometimes I wish I could have an opinion where I didn't see the other side, and I could be all gung-ho one way. There are some things that I am, even though I can see both sides. I'm still, I still get a little, like a certain loophole that someone tries to slide through about not being an attorney. That kind of a situation still gets me. But there's some things I'm gung-ho about. But for the most part, you could call me a fence sitter, you can call me whatever, but part of being able to argue is being able to argue both sides. And if you can argue both sides and trade places with the person you're arguing with, like, could you imagine if lawyers had to trade sides and represent the other side for a day? How more civil shit would be? Before filing the motions to unseal relevant, the court directed the government to state whether before filing the instant motion, counsel for the government reviewed the Maxwell grand jury transcripts and whether the government provided notice to the victims of the motion to unseal. Before filing the motions to unseal, relevant counsel for the government reviewed the Epstein and Maxwell transcripts. In addition, the government has now provided notice to all but one of the victims who are referenced in the grand jury transcripts at issue in this motion. The government has attempted to contact the remaining victim, but such efforts have been unsuccessful. In addition, the government is in the process of providing notice to any other individuals provided or identified. Provision of materials to the court. The court directed the government to submit indices of Epstein and Maxwell grand jury materials, including a brief summary, pages, and dates, complete set of Epstein and Maxwell transcripts, complete redacted set of Epstein transcripts, and a description of any other Epstein and Maxwell grand jury materials, including but not limited to exhibits. As to the final category, the government provides a description of all the underlying materials presented to the grand jury, as well as copies of and proposed redactions to certain materials presented to the grand jury. The government is submitting these materials ex parte and under seal as they are related to grand jury proceedings and include information related to victims, including but not limited to identifying information of individuals who neither testified at trial or were the subject of testimony at trial. The government underscores that it takes very seriously its obligation to protect victim-related information and therefore believes the proposed redactions are not only appropriate but necessary to protect those rights. Yeah, but here's the I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. However, these might have been people who said things, but when they said things, kind of like if you watch the NTSB hearing with us, the guy was like, I said things, I brought up my concerns, and I was told to shut up. So it's one of those situations, too, where are these people who said, see something, say something, said something, and were ignored by law enforcement, DOJ, FBI, whoever they might have spoken to, and were plain ignored. Just because they knew something doesn't mean they didn't try to help and were silenced, so to speak. So in most cases, it's going to be, I believe, what you say, but there could be those instances where people said stuff, their names were mentioned, that they were the ones reporting things, and now their name is out there, and people are so... It brings me back to the case that we talked about yesterday and Tuesday, and hell, on Wednesday too, where some sides get a little bit gung-ho before they know all the facts. Sometimes people get a little gung-ho, and in this world, people get a little gung-ho and are dangerous. So if it's a safety thing, because some people are so out there that having names, even though those people have nothing to do with it, and we're the good people in the situation, might be put into danger because of just the nature of the crazy in this world. And hey, Hose Picker, how are you? It's just, there is no easy answer. So this was also submitted by Pam Bondi. So I think we have, this is document 68. Woo, 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 woo. This is one of the first emails. And I'm just making sure that this is not, okay. This person's name is not in it. I checked to see if I had to redact anything in here because even though these documents are public, I am not sharing names because that's just not my personality. So I wanted to make sure that if there was names mentioned, they were redacted. So I tried to read through some of these quickly to make sure that I had them all redacted. So if I don't, you'll see me take it off and put the name or cover up the name. So if you see me drop it real quick, it's because I fucked up. All right. Dear Honorable Judge Berman, as a suffering victim of Epstein and his co-conspirators, I would like to highlight some of the things that stand out to me for many reasons on the latest memo written by an anonymous member of the DOJ. 1. I am not sure the highest priority here is the victims, justice for the victims, or combating child exploitation, or at least I do not feel this way. If there was a justice for the victims, we would seek some kind of accountability for the years they allowed this horrible human being, if you can call him that, to prey on underage and young girls while jet-setting around the world with high-profile individuals and or entrapping his victims in various mansions and or his notorious private island. And to make matters more severe, continue to traffic ARP and victims while on prison work release and or even after being a registered offender for about a decade. Rather, I feel like the DOJ and FBI's priority is protecting the third party, the wealthy men, by focusing on scrubbing their names off the files of which the victims know who they are. To learn that our own president has utilized thousands of agents to protect his identity and these high-profile individuals is monumentally mind-blowing. That is their focus. Wow. That says a lot, and I don't know what to think of these. 2, the fact that he, quote, self-deleted in prison leaves us all empty, without answers, without resolution, with the ongoing conspiracy that will never die. I ask myself every day what happened. Did he really? Is he still alive? Where is he buried? Why didn't we get to see his body? This all leaves me fearful, angry, and rightfully devastated and damaged. 3, I'm gonna go rage eat some cookies. Yeah. Yeah. And these are victim statements, and these are the things that were never mentioned. All you heard was that Trump said for Bondi to put a motion in to release the files, and then you heard that a judge denied it. You didn't hear about this. And this is why we go beyond right versus left, Trump versus Biden, or Trump versus TDS people. We actually look at the documents because the victims' letters are where shit gets real. And it goes from talking about we want to know, just because, and in my opinion, half the people in this world that want to know don't want to know to get justice. They want to know to be nosy, because that's just the kind of people that some people are. And it's not that I don't have my nosy moments, I do. But I believe that a lot of people aren't in this to protect the victims or to make sure that the perpetrators are held accountable. Most people, in my opinion, want this because they like gossip. And to them, like Camelot 331 says, people online are like a TV show to people. Like, you don't think that these people are real and these are real lives. But they are. And it's like, yeah, we sit behind, here in our perfect little worlds and we talk about shit, but there is real suffering in this world, and someone calling you by the wrong gender is not suffering. This right here is what suffering looks like. And unfortunately, that's why we're reading it. 3, the latest attention on the Epstein files or the client list is out of control, and the ones that are left to suffer are not the high-profile individuals, it's the victims. Why the lack of concern in handling such sensitive information for the victim's sake? And I'm really curious on what she means by this. and I'm like I said, I'm assuming this is a woman just on the way it's written. Um, we're just gonna call her a she. I'm wondering what is going on. I appreciate your time in reading my short thoughts and feelings on my anxiety and frustration is not aimed at you. Obviously, that right there is how I know it's a woman. It is aimed at the very government here, the ones asking to release these transcripts, exhibits, etc., of which the victims are not privy to, while they have concluded that there is nothing more to see on the files they hold. Yet no one has seen them but them. I am beside myself. She's got a really good point. Like, the victims haven't even seen this stuff. Why are you going to release it to the public when you haven't shown it to the victims? I wonder if the ones fighting the release are the ones worried about exposure for themselves. I wouldn't doubt it. Please don't Clinton me. But it's just one of them situations where shit is difficult. Like shit's difficult, and it's a lot more than just release the files. That's what's I want to make evident with all of this, that this is a lot more than release the files, release the list. There is a group of people out there who are feeling very unsure about things. And although transparency is good, they haven't even seen some of this shit, if this person is to be believed. And I have no reason not to, so we're just going to take it at face value. I think that I would request from you, Your Honors, to consider having an approved third party review these documents to ensure that no victims' names or likenesses are revealed through this release. It is imperative with the scrutiny over this media frenzy that the victims are completely and entirely protected. It's not wrong. Thank you so much for your time. I have attached the portion of the DOJ's memo and link to their statement. So she says, consistent with prior disclosures, this review confirmed that Epstein harmed over 1,000 victims. Each suffered unique trauma. Sensitive information relating to these victims is intertwined throughout the materials. This includes specific details such as names, likenesses, physical descriptions, places of birth, associates, and employment histories. One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. To that end, while we have labored to provide the public with the maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the FBI that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Yeah, but also I've never been in a situation like that person. So I like, who am I to gatekeep someone's trauma response? I talked about it yesterday when it came to talking about Erica Kirk. Who are we to gatekeep how someone heals? And it doesn't sound like she's against it, because it just sounds like she's very, very worried about being identified, which is totally fair. That one. Then we have another one. And this person just calls herself victim/survivor. I think I'm going to get through these and we will do the actual judge's order on the next one, because that is 14 pages in itself and requires some scrutiny. Not necessarily a bad way, but just like the first pages from the government, we went over why I thought the government was full of shit. You know, things I agreed with and things I didn't agree with. We're going to do the same thing with the judge. but his is longer. All right. Dear Honorable Judge Berman, I come forward to you in disdain, disgust, and fear of how the U.S. DOJ is handling the promise to release the Epstein files. Out of respect for the court, I will keep this short, to the point, and direct as possible. It has been a very difficult time for me personally, mentally, and emotionally dealing with the circus around the Epstein files. I use quotations because what are these files exactly anyway? And that's always been my point, is like, what are that? It's not like you've got a file out of them, like people joke around, they got a file in high school. It's not exactly how it goes, but you know, thanks, Heidi. I got, please do that. It's one of those things of who am I to gatekeep how somebody else reacts to trauma and heals. I don't know. And in Erica Kirk's sake, I don't think she wanted to forgive. I think she did it because that's what her husband would do. Because he's a better person than most of them. He was a better person than damn near all of us. I regrettably feel the need to come forward and shed some light on the government's motion to unseal transcripts, documents, and exhibits from the case that was never tried. Sad to say for the victims, we never got our day in court. Apparently, Epstein unalived himself under whose watch? Oh, it was Trump's DOJ. Interesting. Although I am for complete and utter transparency on this case, we deserve transparency from our own government, the agencies that were supposed to be there to protect us as victims, and guess what? They utterly and completely failed us. Unfortunately, with their disregard for the victims, I feel it's imperative to write this letter to the court. Because I personally desire to remain anonymous, I feel like I do not have a voice. Therefore, with it being my right to have an opinion as victim in this matter, I have a voice to speak to the court and to the U.S. Dear United States, I wish you would handle the whole Epstein files with more respect towards and for the victims. I am not some pawn in your political warfare. What you have done and continue to do is eating at me day after day, as you help to perpetuate the story indefinitely. Why not be completely transparent? Show us all the files with only the necessary redactions. Be done with it and allow us to heal. You protect yourself and your powerful and wealthy friends, not enemies, over the victims. Why? The victims know the truth. We know who are in the files, and now so do you. Okay, the way this is written, is just really interesting to me. Like, how she's writing this is fascinating. And in the sense of, to the people who may read this, Pam Bondi, like, you didn't know who were in the files before. You thought you did, but you don't. It's like, you thought you know, but you thought you knew, but you had no idea, kind of a mentality, which is really fascinating to me because it makes you wonder who, friends, not enemies. This right here, this statement, your wealthy friends, not enemies. It's and the things I'm getting from these victim statements are they want them released, but they don't want to be identified. It's just hard to do. So I don't know. And Hung Hero, thank you for the 20 Squid Pro Club memberships. I appreciate you so much. So much. And I hope you're doing all right. So this also right here, she's talking to Trump's administration and your wealthy friends, not enemies. So it's like, are these people that she's referring to, like I want to break this down because this is just how my brain works. And like the way people write things is so important to deciphering their mentality when they're writing. And you could feel the anger in her writing. But are there people that we think are enemies, but they're not? It's just fascinating. Oh, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Why is your anxiety getting up there? You gave her the ring. You're fine. Calm yourself. Calm your tits, bro. Like, you're fine. You have no reason to be nervous. I understand it's a thing, but I'm just giving you a pep talk. Not like you need it, but you are fine. 2 weeks. 2 weeks, you're fine. What are you nervous about? You've been with her for how long? How long? Heidi, he's getting married. Our Hung hero is he put a ring on it last year, or I want to say last year. So it's a gorgeous ring too. 2 years, exactly. You've been with her for 2 years. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. It's not like you were on that TV show, Who the Bleep Did I Marry? You're fine. I know. I know he's getting married. You made it sound like it was so, like he was doing something harmful. He's getting married. He's fine. He's fine. Uh, that's the other thing that I don't understand. It's like you want transparency, but part of being transparent, it's you are part of the transparency and you want to remain anonymous. So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I completely understand, and I do not fault her for wanting to remain anonymous. However, you can't have complete transparency and still remain anonymous. That's not how shit works. It's not how this shit works. So I just I can't. The victims know the truth. We know who are in the files, and now so do you. Do you really think that the public is ignorant of the truth? Further redacting the names, like yours, will only cause the distraction you say you don't want, and the conspiracies that you are in fact stirring. So I will continue to stay silent and continue to hide from all the pain and suffering. This is another thing I don't get. This is another thing I don't get. You want, you know who they are. Why don't you just come out and say it? Like, why don't these victims, I understand they are going through hell, but they know who these people are. Like, uh, out of fear of you and your wealthy, powerful friends, in the end, we are the biggest voices of truth, and the truth always comes out in time. So, anonymously post, and they need the proof. The proof is locked in that grand jury. Yeah, well, and yeah, and that's the thing. There is one or one. Um, I redacted her name, but in this statement that she wrote, um, eh, is some things just don't compute, especially when the survivor has victim mentality based in fear. Yeah, um, it's just, dear Judge Berman, in making your decision to allow the U.S. sitting attorneys for the DOJ's request to release the files, I asked you to have our attorneys review the suggested redactions, as they are the ones who also know the victims, their names, their truths. See this right here. And their stories, unlike the U.S. government, who did not and does not even care to know our truth. They would rather ask a convicted, imprisoned sex trafficker abuser for information. Or did you write this and then you are not, now you are, I don't know. This woman is obviously angry. And in a way, I don't blame her for being angry. However, just like unlike the US government who does not even care to know our truth. Remember there was a 4-year gap between 2021 and January of 2025 where all of these could have been released by somebody else. So when we all want to blame Trump and Pam Bondi, remember there was a 4-year fucking period where these could have been released by somebody else. So just remember that. Anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Yeah, which is why I don't get angry at people. I get indifferent and I just stop caring because people aren't worth mental energy. So um, they would rather ask a convicted and present sex trafficker or abuser for information. Where were you in 2022, 2023, 2024, begging for these people to release information? You're doing it now because they wrote a request, but it's like she's blaming it. It's like she's blaming Bondi and Trump. This is what I'm getting from this, but this is not the basis. Like, where was she in 2022, 23, and 24, asking for this shit to be released or asking for the government to care? Was she? I just a thought. I have no evidence either way. It's just one of those things of why are you acting all angry now? Where have you been for the last 3 years? Where have your lawyers been trying to get this information out? In conclusion, I beg the court to make sure it's the utmost priority that in any sort of release, all and every detail that could possibly reveal our identities be redacted. I request that you take your time in making your decision and consider allowing for the victim's attorneys to review those files before a release is permitted. Side note, if other victims do not mind having their personal information redacted, my voice is not for them. Sincerely, victim survivor. The reason they didn't redact him is because Jeffrey was a Democrat. There's too much information to incriminate. I think there's half of our government going down. Half of our government. So this was also this was the one Bondi put a letter into the judge as well. So I think we got another about 15 minutes left, and we are going to call it a night. Because I'm tired. 70. There we go. And every time it resets the way. There we go. Oop. And that is why I'm claiming Trump himself is not implicated here at all. They'd have gone to one of those judges that keep blocking anything Trump does to have this released or leaked. That's true. That's why that's part of the reason where it was like, if he was in, and somebody said I'm argumentative because all I said was in another person's chat. I literally said to this person, I was like, if he was in there, and I was typing it just like I'm saying it now. There was no like argument there, but she takes shit the wrong way all the time. But I will still go in and say hi to her every time because I'm not a bitch ish. I was literally like, if Trump's name was in there, that the last 4 years when they've been trying to arrest him, convict him of everything and anything, sent him to prison, if his name was in there, that shit would have been leaked between 2021 and 2025. Just saying. Oh, it's gone, but it's been replaced. I was going to do a 5-day fast to like jumpstart my diet and kick this sugar addiction that I have because I've been absolute crap lately. And then I I was reminded today that Mother Nature is a bitch, just like me. So, yep, if Trump was implicated in those files, it would have been shouted from the rooftops. Hey, Outpost Nerd, how are you tonight? All right, I think this is going to be the last document because it's 4 pages. And then we'll go into the rest of the victim statements and the judge's opinion and ruling next time. Like I said, that's 14-page document in itself. So the people who are just like, see, it was a liberal judge. I self-identify as a moderate Republican. However, not everything is because someone's liberal. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So we shall see what actually is in there. Exactly. They're doing a full deployment of troops to both Chicago and Portland. They attacked the wrong person this time. They attacked the SEC. Woo! They're also going to Milwaukee, I heard, because Milwaukee and Chicago are right down the road from each other. They're like 80 miles apart. So, and when all those people flee from Chicago, where do they go? My city. This is from Bondi. Dear Judges Berman and Engelmeyer, the government writes respectfully to respond to the court's orders July 31st, directing the government to provide additional information regarding the grand jury materials. And the government asked the court to unseal in these cases. In particular, July 18th, the government moved the court to unseal grand jury transcripts from these cases, subject to appropriate redactions. The court directed the government to provide supplemental briefing, which the government submitted July 29th. In addition, the court set a schedule whereby the defendants and victims could set out their positions on or before August 5th. On July 31st, the court directed the government to provide additional information by August 4th, in particular the Epstein case, a letter verifying the dates of all grand jury presentations in this case, providing all exhibits shown to the grand jurors, stating whether the government moves to unseal the grand jury exhibits, as well as the transcripts, identifying with specificity the grand jury exhibits that are not already part of the public record. They may be redacted for public release, analyzing how the whatever filed in this case, that's a freaking word that I can't say to save my ever-loving life. Filed in this case impacts the proposed disclosure with legal authorities. In the Maxwell case, the court directed the government to provide additional information by August 4th, in particular a letter stating whether the government moves to unseal the grand jury exhibits as well as the transcripts, or just the transcripts, identifying with specificity the grand jury exhibits as redacted for public release that are not already a part of public record. In making this assessment, the government should take into account whether the unredacted portions of these exhibits were received in evidence during trial in this case, otherwise disclosed on the docket of this case, or disclosed in the course of civil litigation. See Guffrey versus Maxwell. Identifying with specificity the information testified to in the grand jury transcripts redacted for proposed release that is not already a part of the public record, taking into account the sources above. Yeah, correlation does not equal causation. And before you got here, I had kind of a little conversation about those high-profile circles, and you might not like somebody, but you still smile, nod, and shake hands because having them as a civil acquaintance is a lot less trouble than having them as an enemy. Because the court's orders and the information sought are consistent in several respects, the government respectfully submits this consolidated letter response. First, at this time, the government has moved only to unseal the grand jury transcripts in these cases. Of course, the grand jury exhibits are not only exhibits in these cases, a large number of exhibits were admitted in the Maxwell trial, which trial exhibits are subject to judicially approved redactions and or sealing, presumptively public documents. Public has an especially strong right of access to evidence introduced in trials. Trial exhibits are judicial documents to which an especially strong common law presumption of access applies. The government previously made those trial transcripts subject to any judicially approved redactions and or sealing available to the public through a website during the Maxwell trial. The government respectfully requests leave of the court to advise the court by August 8th, 2025 of its position with respect to unsealing of the grand jury exhibits. Such timing will permit the government to consider, with respect to its underlying position, as well as with any respect to necessary redactions, any submissions to the court by the victims identified in the grand jury transcripts, which are due to the court August 5th. Second, the Epstein grand jury met on June 18th, 2019 and July 2nd, 2019. Maxwell grand jury met on June 29th, 2020, July 8th, 2020, and March 29th of 2021. Third, government has provided the court with all substantive exhibits from the grand jury presentations of either Epstein and Maxwell cases that it currently has in its possession. The government respectfully submits under seal to Judge Berman one additional grand jury exhibit from the Epstein case that it referenced in its letter to the court but did not have readily available at the time. Fourth, in connection with this letter, the government respectfully submits to Judge Engelmeyer under seal and ex parte a version of the Maxwell grand jury transcripts that specifically identifies which information in the transcripts is not, as far as the government is aware, publicly available. As previewed in the government submissions of July 29, 2025, many of the victims and witnesses testified at trial consistent with the accounts offered in the grand jury by investigating law enforcement witnesses. The enclosed, annotated transcripts show that much of the information provided during the course of the grand jury testimony, with the exception of the identities of certain victims and witnesses, was made publicly available at the trial or has otherwise been publicly reported through the public statements of victims and witnesses. Fifth, the substantive grand jury exhibits are not currently part of the public record. The government, however, is undertaking to identify for the court any specific portions of the grand jury exhibits that are reflected in the public record. In doing so, the government endeavors to compare the exhibits against the voluminous public and sealed exhibits offered at the Maxwell trial, and to review certain relevant civil litigation dockets of which the government is aware to the extent such dockets are publicly available. The government respectfully requests leave of this court to supplement this letter no later than August 8th in order to respond to item 4 of Judge Berman's order and item 2 of Judge Engelmeyer's order. This is also confusing because it deals with multiple orders from multiple cases. Sixth, I freaking hate, I'm so bad at Latin. Filed in the Epstein case does not impact the proposed disclosure, while Supreme Court has noted in a different context that a court's jurisdiction ends when that Latin word is entered. Ex parte Wilson. It did so in the context of a court having the ability to enter a judgment. To contrary, at least one court has explicitly held that does not deprive a court of the authority to determine whether to disclose a sealed grand jury minutes. So, boomers and their funny clocks. You mean the clocks with hands? There's a lot to read. Footnote. No leg. Thank you. And it's like certain people in the word pecuniary. Like no matter how hard they try, they can't say it. That's me in this word. I will never, you will never hear me say it correctly. Just no matter how hard I try. So I just don't. So I don't get another, how shall we say, what Unhung Hero super chats me about, how I say a certain defendant in a certain NIL lawsuit, how I say their name. Although there was no Epstein public trial, the government is prepared to do a similar analysis regarding the Epstein grand jury transcripts if Judge Berman believes it would assist in the court's analysis of the Craig factors related to the government's motion in Epstein. All I know is Pam Bondi can talk. She gets them fingers a flying. The same jurisdiction that was sought in the beginning continues to exist insofar as the integrity and preservation of the minutiae and minutes and proceedings of those steps are concerned. What was done here is evident and may be advantaged by either party, having in mind, of course, the question of the secrecy of the grand jury proceedings and the only jurisdiction over such matters in this court, ordering limited disclosure of sealed grand jury testimony after an entry of, yeah. However, the fact that Epstein passed away, which was the basis for the entry of that again, is a factor to be considered. Noting that the current status of the principals of the grand jury proceedings and that of their families is a factor that a trial court might want to consider when confronted with these highly discretionary and fact-sensitive special circumstances motions. Boomer here. I love analog and the fact that young ones these days can't understand the struggles. Oh, I'm technically a millennial, but I'm mid 80s. Like I split the 80s right down the middle. And I think it's amazing that you can disable Gen Z with some pretty you can disable Gen Z with an analog clock, a rotary phone, and a stick shift. And some cursive. That's all it takes. Hey, J. Katie Buck, how are you tonight? Hey, you can include me in there. Sticky widget. Everybody relax in here. It's just, yeah. See, I don't know. The jury's still out. No pun intended. I don't know how I feel about her. I don't know how I feel about that either. But we're just going to leave that comment alone. Seventh, regarding the government's approach to victim notification of the instant proceedings, as noted in its July 29th submission, the government has provided notice of the unsealing motions to all but one of the victims who are referenced in the grand jury transcripts at issue in the motions. The government still has been unable to contact their remaining victim. With respect to the victims who are not identified in the grand jury transcripts, but who have previously received victim notifications in the Maxwell and Epstein matters, the government will, over the coming days, alert those victims of the fact of the unsealing motions. Finally, in light of the government's ongoing efforts to ensure that the interests of victims and other third parties are appropriately considered, as well as the multifaceted nature of these and other relevant proceedings, it may be necessary or appropriate for the government to modify or supplement the information provided today, and the government commits to doing so as promptly as practicable. As always, the government is available to answer any questions the court may have. Respectfully submitted, Pam Bondi and Jay Clayton. So that's the last one we're going to go through tonight. But you can see, like, all we did was get through the motion to unseal from the government, some of the responses from victims. We haven't even gotten through all the victim responses that are in there. And we haven't even gotten to the judge's motion. So it's a lot more than Trump won't release the Epstein files. A liberal judge won't release the Epstein files. There is so much more than there is so much more than what is being reported from either side. And you get all these little snippets of this person won't do this person won't do this person won't do this. Y'all see how many documents we went through tonight? Like, oh, if you speaking of that, I don't have it keyed up right now, but James O'Keefe, the O'Keefe Media Project, I sent that's Jeffrey, I sent that to you. Um, there is a video from James O'Keefe that is very, very interesting. Some of it I believe, some of it I'm on the fence about. However, um, it's very interesting from a legal perspective of what actually is going on, what actually is happening, who knows what. Yeah, yeah, you don't believe it for a second. I know, but it's just so, and I don't necessarily not believe that. That's what's weird. It was plausible. It was plausible to me. So it was plausible to me, and the fact that it was plausible. Um, does anybody know if Shizzy or Mo are going live tonight before FNL? Because I can't find them and trying to redirect. So I don't know if they have a stream set up or my stuff is just being stupid. Does anybody know if they have a can you ask an unrelated question? Sure. You can. I mean, sorry, I'm just looking up on, and I don't see it, so we're gonna try. Why isn't even there? There we go. So because I can't find Mo or Shizzy's streams, because I don't know what channel they're on tonight, if they're even doing it, we are redirecting to FNL because he had already set up. Yeah, they always do. Well, not always. They do a FNL pregame on Fridays, and they usually do it about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So I was just like, if they had the stream set up, I was going to look for it, but I can't find it. However, the expert does have his stream already set up. So go over there. Even if you can't stay, drop a like, say hi. What did you say? Shizzy. Oh, Salty Cracker just went live. I have us already set up to redirect. There's a bunch of people, weird streams that are like coming up. I think the little messed up my algorithm. So things aren't coming up in my algorithm like they normally would. So, what the hell? Yeah, I don't subscribe to Tug, so I don't watch Tug, so they don't come up in my stuff. So, yeah. So I'm Jeffrey. I'm now an anti what the hell's ecosystem person. So yeah, y'all can kiss my ass with that one. uh, hugs. Bye. You ask the victims who they blame. One word comes out of their mouth, and it's Clinton. I don't doubt that. I'm just. Is there a source to find out if someone pays restitution to the victims? I have absolutely no idea. From all of this perspective, just like everything else, I went straight to the documents, what was actually filed with the courts, not what's happening behind the scenes, because there's too much. I don't know this. I don't know that. There's too much what ifs. I just can't keep up with it all. So, well, can't be the anti what the hell's ecosystem, won't you? Your giant paychecks from Jeremy. Yeah, right. Yeah. People got mad at me before because I said we weren't friends. There's a good chance we will never be friends. Ever. Ever. Like, I can put money on that shit. I will put money on that shit. I don't want him anywhere near this channel. So, because yesterday pissed me off royally because I got painted as an anti what the hell's ecosystem person because a certain person was in here and he grouped me with other creators, and I don't know how I feel about that. But just like a lot of other people, not like he cares, but I don't want certain people anywhere near this channel because all they do is bring drama. So y'all have a great day. On that note, have a great day. Bye.